All right, here we go, guys. Lift Lab Report coming at you. I'm going to try to make this a little quicker today, kind of get right into the meat and bones of it, kind of how I became a professional gambler and where that led things. This is inspired by Andy Frischilla had a post talking about how many people really don't actually take steps necessary to create change in their life. They're more content or feel stuck fantasizing about the life they could have instead of actually trying to go and create that life. And I am kind of blessed or cursed in the sense of I cannot sit still and I cannot accept things for how they are. It can be a curse when you're talking about other people's actions, right? Not being able to accept that, even though I have no control over it, right? But when it comes to like the businesses, my personal life, my personal experiences, I feel like I have a lot of ability to change that, and I will just keep working to find solutions to kind of create this niche that I want in my life. It wasn't always that way. I was in a relationship shortly after I graduated college. I had moved up to Chicago, and I was kind of just doing like the next steps in life kind of stuff, just kind of floating really. And I was working at a gym, but in the last couple of years of college, I got really, really, really deep into playing poker. This kind of before it was like really online and popular. This kind of came about roughly at the same time. But when I moved to Chicago in Northwest Indiana, there's a lot more access to legal gambling, and there was poker rooms. So I started playing poker like pretty consistently to the point where I was out earning what I was making working at the gym playing poker. And that relationship ended around 2008. And I was like, man, I think I'm just going to give this a shot and just play essentially poker professionally. So I did. And I did that for almost 2 years, a little over a year, under 2 years, somewhere in that time frame. And I can best describe playing poker professionally as a hard way to make an easy living. Right. So anybody that plays poker professionally will tell you that not every day is a good day. Just like anything in the office, you're going to have some losses and you had to be calculated with those losses. But what that did was when I kind of went for it, I realized like, man, you know what? You're a little bit more, you're better at this than maybe you even thought you were. And you're capable of kind of creating and doing your own thing. And in late 2009, I was like, man, I'm going to take another change and really change my life. And I decided I was going to become a Division I strength and conditioning coach, get into graduate school and do all these things. And it seemed the words of it were pretty easy, but the reality of it was in undergrad, I wasn't that great of a student. I didn't have connections in Power 5 sports. In fact, I had none. And the blank slate that I was starting from was just that. And initially, when I looked at how I got into Division I strength and conditioning at Purdue, I looked at it as kind of like, it was basically like a redheaded stepchild. And how it went was I had one connection to get into grad school, and I leveraged that really hard, and that was at Purdue. I had also applied at Southern Miss. They had an open position, and at the same time, I had started the testing process for OCS, and going through those steps, and because I thought maybe I want to be an officer, maybe I want to be a Navy SEAL. And the Navy SEAL thing is always easier to do from the couch than in reality. But when I actually was afforded the opportunity to make a choice of which direction I want to go with my path, and I chose to go the path of grad school. Obviously, I didn't become a Navy SEAL. And that's not to undermine that process at all. It's not like if I just decide to do it, I'd be in. Okay, that's the caveat. But when I got leading up to Purdue, I had a boss there named Jim Lathrop. He's a great guy. He's at Illinois State now, but he had no idea who I was. I was emailing him all the time. Anybody that knows Jim, that man does not do technology, doesn't care about technology. He probably still has a flip phone. He had a flip phone until I was done working for him in 2012. But emails, nothing, just no response. And in fact, I got to the point where I sent him, I believe it was like FedEx, the certified mail or whatever, where they had to sign for it. So he personally had to sign for this letter. And I wrote him this letter basically telling him how I was going to change my life, right? Probably going to be the greatest assistant strength and conditioning coach he's ever seen, you know, the whole shebang. As me going to Purdue and da-da-da-da-da. And he never responded. Didn't hear from him at all. And I decided that, I'm going to go ahead and take a risk. I went to grad school at Purdue, and then I just showed up at the Mollenkoff Center. So that's the facility where the Purdue athletes train. And so I walked in the front doors of Mollenkoff. If you turn to the left, there's a weight room. I walked in there, walked all the way back in the office. It was just curmudgeon-y old man that I had seen, from his internet photos sitting in the office. He has his feet up on his desk doing a Sudoku puzzle, really doesn't give a shit that I'm there. And I basically just, introduce myself, and he's not even really looking up at this point. And then it hits him. And he's like, oh, you're the guy that's been sending me these certified letters I got to keep signing for. And now at this point, I'm kind of pissed because I'm a grown adult at this point. I'm not even a child. And I was like, yeah, you never responded. And he was like, nah, I knew if you wanted this bad enough, you'd just show up. And here you are. And I was like, okay. And he basically said, look, I don't know you. Nobody knows you. I don't give a shit. He's like, but you've been willing to take all these steps. I will let you work here for free for a semester. If it goes well, then we will get you paid. If it doesn't, you will just go down like the many others that have come before you. Okay. And so that's how it started. And I didn't know anybody. I was certainly an outcast. I didn't have anything. I had been working in a Globo gym. They didn't know that I had been playing poker professionally, but the long and short of it was it worked out really well. Jim and I became really close, and I stayed for 3 years with Jim. And the first year, I didn't remember a semester or a year. It might have been a year. It was a long time. It didn't matter because it didn't pay shit anyway. But for a long time, I didn't make any money. And I didn't care because I was completely committed to the path and the pursuit that I was on. And I was getting a stipend. I was a fully, oh my gosh, where they pay for everything. Fully funded graduate assistant in the academic side. So I was a professor. I taught and did my master's and ultimately the PhD program there as well. So I did have some money coming in. It was nothing, right? But I was okay with it. And I learned a lot and tons of valuable lessons. And I used to look at that path and think it was a real negative, but it turns out that circuitous route to getting where you want to be was probably the most beneficial thing that could have happened to me. And it paid off again when I decided, you know what, after a couple of years, that I didn't want to be in Power 5 athletics. In fact, I didn't want to be in collegiate athletics. My oldest was born, and the luster of that had kind of worn off for me. It doesn't wear off for everybody, but it didn't have the prestige that it initially had towards me. And I decided that I was going to move on from it. And then I started owning businesses. Again, it was a scenario where I knew absolutely nothing about owning a business. I just knew that it was a path I wanted to be on. And so I jumped in both feet and just worked an insane amount of hours, open to close every single day. And in your business, you'll grow what you care about, right? And if let's say you're a part-time employee or something like that, and you only work 1 hour a night or 3 hours a night or whatever, the chances are you're going to grow the 1 hour that you're really focused on. You're not going to grow the rest of the business. And so when people are like, well, how do you grow, a boutique style gym? The answer is be there. And you got to be there a lot of hours, and you got to care. And that's how you get the long-term growth and ultimately the financial reward that we're seeking that keeps us going, right? So that was how the next 7 years of owning a business went for me. It was open to close, minimum 5 days a week, oftentimes 6, sometimes 7, right? And sacrificing a whole lot of other aspects of my life to get that off the ground and running. And for a while there, I thought that I was pretty stuck in the genre of just being a person that could be a businessman in the health and fitness industry. And I quickly realized that's not the case either. Humans are insanely adaptable, highly malleable people, and they can learn new skills all the time. And selling things is universal across all industries. The complexity to it, the background information, what you need to know is different, but all those things are learned and can easily transfer and translate to another area of your life, another industry. Somewhere on that path, I'd say around 2018, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I was like, pretty fat, pretty overweight. Not that I'm not, I'm still a little fat, but I got to the point where I was like, this has to change. Like, being fat for a couple years now, spending all my time doing this. I need to figure out a way to balance it out. And I dedicated myself to that, to being less fat and being more of like the man that I wanted to be, right? I took a look at myself in the mirror physically, right? And then metaphorically as well, right? Am I being the best dad I can be? Am I being the best partner, the best friend, those sort of things? And then I put those parts of my life under the microscope and those parts of my life under construction. And then I take dedicated steps towards making that change. But what happens is you sit around and you're surrounded by people that aren't doing that. And they're very much not stuck, but just kind of floating through. And it's in all industries too, right? I see it in the device industry. I see dudes that are just, it's golden handcuffs. They have a pretty comfortable amount of money and they're just comfortable. They're not really finding any joy in their day-to-day work. A lot of times there's a little more like just, drinking those casual beers every day, those sort of things, right? So I got to agree with Andy Frisella when very few people will take the steps to actually make the change. And I've heard this talked about on numerous podcasts where there's always somebody wanting to know how to do it, right? How do you start a business? How do you lose weight? How do you transition industry? How do you become a father? How do you, we know how you become a father. How do you be a good dad, right? And there's somebody always wanting to know how. And the simplest, easiest answer is you just do it. You just commit to doing the thing and then you figure it out as you go. And we can all do that. But you got to change this one last thing. You got to think about who you surround yourself with and what those people are doing. Not to be an elitist asshole, but you're never going to be in my circle of friends, and you probably don't want to be, but you're never going to be in my circle of friends if you're not somebody that's just trying to get it every single day. That doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, right? I mean, you can work a 9-to-5 job. You want to be the best at your 9-to-5 job. You want to be the best dad you can be. You want to train. You want to be physically fit. You want to lead and be the type of guy you want to be, right? But if you kind of just settle into the mediocrity of old friendships and old behaviors, and you're just listening to the same old bullshit from the same old people all the time, you got to mix it up. You got to get into a new group, a social circle, a new work circle, a new professional circle, whatever it may be, and you got to start making changes. And this is coming from a guy who's extremely loyal, pride myself on loyalty, and I love routine and consistency. But I do have the wherewithal to just stop, look around, and ask myself, is this the environment that I want to be in? I would strongly suggest that you do the same.